The following is a Papi Chulo Radio original program. The views and opinions expressed in the commentaries and/or interviews in the following program are solely those of the individuals and are not views of Papi Chulo Radio, its parent, affiliate, or subsidiary companies.
Welcome to the Central City Citizen, a PapiChuloRadio.com original series. Papi Chulo Radio, pop culture on demand. Today is Thursday, May 4th, 2023, and I'm your host, Professor X. During this podcast, we'll be having an in-depth discussion on the CW's The Flash. Please welcome my co-host,
Hey,
Jeffrey
Central
Reeves.
City 2000 party over oops, back in time.
Wait a second, I thought it was party over oops out of time.
Well, we're back in time in this episode.
Well, I suppose. Let's jump into our discussion of Season 9, Episode 10, which was titled A Whole New World, Part 1, and aired on May 3rd, 2023. Hope you like that title because it's the last one we're going to get. This is part of a 4-part series that will wrap up Flash, though to be fair, the title of the 4th part is still under wraps. So here's the official synopsis of the episode. As Iris receives word of a career milestone, Barry is suddenly nowhere to be found. In trying to get back home, Barry runs across many familiar faces. Keon continues to figure out her powers, and Chester works on a suit for Allegra. Worth noting, this episode was directed and co-written by showrunner Eric Wallace. Okay, Jeff, the episode opens up with blue roses and someone getting ready for the day at the West House. But it's not Joe West, even though it is a familiar face. It's Dr. Gilmore, an employee of Mercury Labs, but he looks exactly like our old friend Eddie Thawne. Jeff, when did you clock who the mystery man was, and did you have any thoughts about his return?
Okay, well, first up, this episode did have a subtitle, Reunions. So I'm guessing all of the episodes will have a subtitle.
True.
Yes. So the blue man with all the blue, and even later on with the blue song, I mean, they were like, where was the hammer, and was there a lot of blood on it? Because they were bashing us in the head with the blue of it all. I will tell you, and once again, it's one of those situations in which we are cognizant of who is returning and that sort of thing. In the very beginning, I thought it was the other gentleman that returned. And, well, no, I'm even going to lie to you. That's like half a lie. In the very beginning, I was like, is this Barry's father? Just really quick for like a half a second. And then when I saw it was a younger gentleman, I was like, okay, is this the OG actor of the Reverse Flash, a.k.a. the actual Thawne person? And then once, we got a little bit closer, I was like, okay. And I heard the voice. I was like, okay, this is Rick Cosnett. And I was like, all right, this is, I mean, they didn't say it on this episode, but it's fucking cobalt blue. I mean, everything else was blue. It was interesting that it was the West House, or the West, it was West, because it was West first. It was interesting that it wasn't the West House, it was, it's Joe's house.
It's the West House, yeah.
Okay, yeah. It's the West House, which was interesting. I mean, they're reusing a set. I mean, why build another set? Although they did build another set in this episode. But in my mind, it's like, why build another set if you can use, the one that you already have? And I was more curious about when this was, to be quite honest. Like, when is this? Because we got really no inkling until maybe later on about some sort of fancier technology. But I was like, when is this? That was the question, like the big question that I had once I realized who it was, who the actor was at least.
Well, I think the importance of having him in the West House is, I think that was signposting that this is a different Earth.
Oh, that's even
because
better.
I mean, obviously he's a variant of Eddie Thawne, right? So there's no way that he would be on our Earth or the Flash's Earth. So to have him in the West House, I think, from where I was thinking, I thought that's why they chose to do that, was to signpost that someone else is living in this house.
Oh, okay.
So that was my take on it anyway.
You know what? And it's brilliant because after last week.
And I think it plays off of what we see later in the episode at the end, but we'll get to that. At Star Labs,
I
Chester
like
has
it.
Allegra try on a super suit. It's a bit much and she's not a fan. She tells him that she really wants to be herself and feel comfortable doing it. Out of town, Cecile is at home in the country with Joe, who tries to, hey, Country Joe and the fish. Nope, Country Joe and the Cecile, who tries to convince her to stay a little longer and just go in late on Monday. Meanwhile, Keon finds her powers are evolving, but more importantly, lets us know how much time has passed. 9 months since she was born, so about 7 months since the last episode. Jeff, we check in with pretty much the whole team, and even Mark gets an unnecessary shout-out, but this is the last we see of them for the entire episode. How'd you like the openings and this opening showing us the characters, but then the structure of the episode, abandoning the usual B and C storylines?
I didn't mind it because we're headed towards the end. So if it's one sort of cohesive-ish story, I'm kind of here for it. The cinematography was incredibly fascinating. Like it was, I described it to you like pre-show as a little artsy-fartsy, and it was, but in a good way. It was just, it was so strange, but I dug it. The Keown stuff, I think, was the most artsy-fartsy of it all. We got to see her using some really unique powers, and I will say the VFX for that was neat. But then she was like writing a letter to her sisters, so she considers Frost and Caitlin sisters, which is nice. And like they would show us glimpses of the letter, like highlighted words and stuff, which was really interesting. But then she looked directly into the camera, and she was like, basically like, you know, Mark, Mark, where art thou, Mark, to the camera, which I was like, that's a little strange. Like, is she now becoming so self-aware that she, you know, realizes we're watching her as the viewers? Like, that was a weird choice because I don't really understand what that was supposed to mean, outside of the fact that she's writing that letter.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice. Whether it was an actor's choice, I have to imagine it was director's choice because I can't imagine any actor, I can't imagine them either. I can't imagine any actor staring down the lens of the camera unless they've been told to do that. So yeah, it was. Yeah, you're right. It was a little arty, but
Is she
not
Gwenpool
necessarily
now?
in a bad way. Hmm?
I was saying, is she Gwenpool now?
Well, yeah, could Gwenpool or Deadpool or She-Hulk or and again, her powers are evolving. Perhaps she is suddenly doing that.
Yeah, and I will
And
also say, the belly that they used on Candice Patton was actually really good. Sometimes pregnancy bellies for, you know, actors that, you know, clearly are not pregnant, IRL, can be a little wonkalicious, for lack of a better word, and they actually gave her a good one. Like, I was like, all right, look at her, full on pregnant, any day now. Like, all of that was really neat, and they actually spent a little bit of money to create a brand new set for Joe's country house, which I was really shocked because there are only 3 episodes left, so why? But, I mean, props to them for doing it. And it was a neat little quaint looking home.
and as this may be the last time to point this out, Cecile is so much shorter than Joe. I mean, even though she's just sort of hanging out at home, she's wearing 3-inch heels, and she still doesn't come up to his chest.
Yeah, and the way that they left that one with Cecile's face, I was like, oh, okay, maybe there's like a story here. Because he was like, oh, are you
Well,
going to stay out of the
like
weekend?
with any of them, with the exception of going back to
To
Allegra
shag.
and Chester's to get undressed,
Yeah.
it did feel like there was you can certainly see how this didn't have to have the structure that it had. Like we could have checked in with the team. Hey, Barry's missing. Maybe we should be doing something. But I didn't mind spending all that time with Barry. So let's
hmm
get to Barry because
Yeah.
that Barry and Iris is a very pregnant Iris, as you mentioned. Guest alert, she's been nominated for her Pulitzer, but before they can celebrate, Barry's pulled away by a mysterious blue energy. He's dropped out somewhere in Central City, but not the Central City we know. He's quickly discovering that it's been dragged back to 2000. Barry goes to CCPD looking for Joe West and asks for help, but can't tell him his name. He does tell him he's been stranded, and he asks for help finding Dr. Tina McGee. Joe reluctantly agrees to help him and asks Barry to trust him, but before Barry can tell him anything, he realizes what day it is. March 18th, the day his mom dies. Jeff, well, let's talk Joe. I was worried that opening scene with Cecile might be our only dose of Joe in the episode, so I was really happy to see Officer West. How did you like Joe as the cop on the beat?
There was a lot of Joe in this episode, and I was very excited, especially because, and I didn't mention this last time because, we were talking about so much in the previous episode, but Joe wasn't at Barry's birthday, and
Yeah, I noticed. I was going to mention that too.
yeah, and that sucked. Even if they would have just somehow with like a green screen put him in the background or something, I don't know. But anyway, so we got a lot of Joe in this episode. Quick little shout out to the Gamby Cleaners cleaning truck that Barry ran into. I just wanted to mention that before I forgot. I just loved it. Gamby Cleaners, or Gamby Cleaning or whatever. It was, yeah, shout out to Black Lightning. This Joe was awesome. First of all, Sing with the hair.
Yes,
Younger
his
Sing.
hair was fantastic.
Sing was singing. It was fantastic. Joe was just wonderful. Like, oh my God. Props to both Jesse L. Martin and Grant Gustin, because Grant Gustin, as Barry, who's time traveled now so many times, he knows what he should and what he should not do. I also loved his first initial reaction of like, what the fuck did I do now? And like the way that he played it where like he couldn't say anything, but he didn't really want to lie to Joe. And then he used like the best thing that he could. Like, I was told by everybody that if you ever need help, you need to go to Joe West. And that's why I'm here. I can't really say this, that, or the other. Although he was ready to say something. I wonder if he was going to call himself Bart to him. But then he saw the dates, and unfortunately everything just went kaput. But their first scene together was it was amazing. And I love how Jesse L. Martin played it. Once again, we always discuss on other shows about, and on this one as well, about characters playing different versions of themselves. Like, this is clearly Joe. This is the Joe that we know, but a Joe that has no idea who this young man is, this young man that he helped raise.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned how Barry's first reaction was, "What have I done this time?" And if you think back to last episode when Barry dies and Oliver shows up, and the first thing he says to him is, "Barry, what have you done this time?" Yeah, I mean, yeah, Barry's for this last season, Barry's taken a lot of hits to his ego.
Yeah.
Anyway, after leaving Joe, Barry goes to a phone booth and calls Professor Stein, who hangs up on him because he thinks it's a prank. Shout out to Victor Garber, who got a little voice cameo in here.
Yes.
Barry then sees his parents across the street. Before he can cross the street to talk to them, he's hit by a speedster and knocked into the path of the oncoming traffic. Henry Allen protects him while Nora calls 911 or a flip phone. Shout out to a flip phone. Barry wakes up in the hospital with Henry treating him. Nora is also there because privacy is apparently a post-2000 thing. He tells him his name is Bart. Nora immediately starts mothering him. And since Bart needs to eat, they decide to take him out for pizza. Jeff, this is obviously an important moment for Barry. It will get much more important later in the episode, but he's getting to meet his parents again. How did you like the dynamic between the three actors?
I loved it. It was wonderful. It was magical. I will tell you this. This episode was hitting me in the feels. Not enough to get me like teary-eyed or to get any water in my eyes, but I was like feeling the emotions that Grant Gustin was conveying through the screen. Like, he was masterful in this episode. And seeing both of his parents and both actors actually playing his parents this time was just amazing. They looked fantastic. They've been wearing different shoes on this show at times, but they put on those parental shoes. They slipped right into them, and they were just perfect. They were absolutely wonderful, and I was just overblown by the nostalgia and seeing them being Barry's parents with Barry, but Barry calling himself Bart.
It was also interesting because Barry has had the experience of meeting people or forces who have the faces of his parents. But, this was, really the one time where he could actually meet the two of them, when they were still young and, before the tragedy that was about to erupted, which obviously, is going to set up a major conflict for him. Nora and Henry offer Barry a place to stay for the night, but it freaks him out and he says he can't stay. He leaves racing away. He ends up running into Eobard Thawne. Enraged, Barry moves to kill him and Thawne goads him, but Barry doesn't do it. Barry thinks Thawne's the one who brought him here, but Thawne says he didn't. This is just a bonus. They then go to a bar, and Thawne's enjoying the situation. He's planning to kill Barry as a child and feels like he has a pretty good chance since Barry either has to arrest him and miss up the timeline, or kill him, and Barry won't do either. Now, I've been getting a little tired of Reverse Flash over the seasons, but it was really nice to see Matt Letcher playing the role again. Jeff, how'd you like their scenes? And did you believe Thawne when he said he wasn't the one who brought Barry back?
I did believe he was not the one that brought Barry back, just because in the Blue Lightning, and when he disappeared. And it was great to see the original Thawne actor back. Once again, no offense to Tom Cavanaugh, because Tom Cavanaugh, does a really good spin on the Reverse Flash, and it's the one that we've seen the most. But I've always been like, because everyone sort of associates the Reverse Flash with Wells, and I've always been the type of person that's like, he's not Wells, he is Thawne, and we have to remember that. And I'm glad that they have brought the actor back a couple times across the Arrowverse to really put his sort of like stamp on the character. I mean, let's be real. I don't feel like the flavor that he brings is that different to Tom Cavanaugh's, because they have to sort of be similar because it's the same person. So, but seeing sort of like the face be different is always a treat, because we're so used to Tom's Reverse Flash. So having him be the Reverse Flash for this episode was pretty damn awesome. And I kept on like thinking, like I was trying to like piece in like which Reverse Flash is this? Like, is this the one that knows everything from, but then I ended up putting together, okay, this is like the actual Reverse Flash from the night that it happens. Like
Exactly,
he
yeah.
is from the future. He knows everything because he's from the future. He doesn't know everything though that we know as the audience.
Right. He hasn't had the experience of, like, he's fought, Barry in the future, but he doesn't have the past 9 seasons of Reverse Flash memory. So this is still, this is the Reverse Flash who will become Harrison Wells. So it was a little bit, I'd call it fan service, if you will, or doing right by the actor, but basically going back to revisit that season 1 plot element. Henry and Nora, I should say, are worrying over Bart when he shows up at the hospital. He tells them that he's always wondered what he'd tell his parents if he had one more day. And so Nora obviously says he can tell them, so he does. They show him love and support, like Henry and Nora Allen would. As they leave, Barry hears a weird growling noise calling out his name, just like a weird growling noise that Joe heard earlier when he picked up a mysterious blue crystal, which you should never do. It could be meth. But it's 2000. He probably doesn't know about the blue meth. Barry sees what looks like Joe, but his eyes are glowing blue. Barry realizes it isn't Joe, it's the negative Speed Force, and it wants Barry to pay for what he's done. The negative Speed Force wants to kill Barry. Barry can't fight back because the real Joe West is in there. Barry wins somehow by thinking of Iris and baby Nora, and suddenly a blast of positive Speed Force energy hits. It's a little hand-wavy, but anyway. It knocks the crystal out of Joe, but it vanishes. Barry speeds away with Joe, putting him behind the wheel of his squad car. I should mention Detective Singh was closing in, so I was completely convinced this was going to lead to the cliche, Barry being found over Joe's unconscious body and being thrown in jail. So I was pleasantly surprised that's not how it ended. So Jeff, how'd you like how the negative Speed Force was revealed and the fight? And just a little thing here, when did the show stop being about a guy who runs really fast and become about a guy who throws lightning all the time? Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Joe's Black Lightning cosplay, but that seems like most of what we're getting these days.
Now, those are a couple heavy questions. First of all, I was very worried for Joe. Like, I know he has plot armor because this is the past, but once again, we've seen that sometimes things change in the past and it affects the future. So I was very worried when he was possessed, and not only was he possessed, but he was possessed by a psychopathic, sociopathic motherfucker. And he was willing to do this person, this entity was willing to do anything to take down Barry Allen and to make him suffer. Like, Reverse Flash, take notes. Or maybe not, because the series is almost over. So, or maybe he did, because he did a lot in those 9 seasons. But yeah, like this negative Speed Force, this embodiment of the negative Speed Force that wants vengeance for Barry killing the Avatar was incredibly fascinating. Jesse L. Martin, once again, playing this evil character, was phenomenal. Barry had to do what he had to do. I mean, we almost had him murdering the Reverse Flash earlier in the episode. It got very close to it, but then he was like, nope, nope, nope. And so this time around, he has to fight Papa Joe. And I'm like, how's he going to do that? Like, how is he going to get the blue energy out of him? Because clearly he doesn't know anything about the crystal, you know? So I still don't really know how he did it. Like there was like a whole thing with the lightning, throwing and uh, well, Cobalt Blue, because I don't know what to call him other than that. But Cobalt Blue like shoots stuff like laser beams out his like the palm of his hand, which I was like, okay, that's interesting.
My guess here is that that's the hand he was holding the crystal in, because when he got
Okay.
knocked out, it flew out of his hand. So
Oh, okay. All right. That could work. And like that, like the effects were interesting. Like props to them. They were interesting effects. Some would say that this season was maybe a little effects less sometimes. So they went all out with it, and I was here for it. I understand what you're saying about Barry, who's supposed to be running really fast. I mean, he did get some running in this episode, and he did try to like go through the Speed Force, but he didn't have access. But yeah, like I was just like throughout this entire thing, please do not hurt Joe. I mean, I know he doesn't want to hurt Joe, clearly, but in my mind, I'm like, please, Joe needs to come out of this like without even like a paper cut. And even though he got knocked around and tussled, the crystal did get removed from him, and he was whooshed away back to his squad car, and looked very confused. He kept on looking at his hand, so maybe that's what you were saying about the crystal.
I'm not sure if it was that, or like whether it was remember, or whether he was just watching his hand was trembling. It could have been
Okay.
either.
I was
But that
confused
was
as to...
the hand that he would have been holding the crystal in.
Okay, I was confused for a moment. That's what hand? That was the right hand, right? That's not the wedding ring hand, is it?
Correct.
Okay, because I was like, would he have a wedding ring on at that time?
I don't think so. No. Um,
Okay.
oh
Because
yeah,
that would have been
and
another clue if this was a different Earth as well. Because now that you were
first
talking
time
about
in
different
9
Earths.
years that Joe's gotten superpowers. So
Yes, it was
and
good.
Daniel
Oh,
Hannibal's gotten multiple sets of superpowers. Finally, Joe gets some of his own.
yes. And also, just really quick, I have no idea how he got that thing out of him. Like he was thinking like happy thoughts, like,
I
when
know, not explained at
Tinkerbell
all.
dies, you're supposed to think of
Yeah.
happy thoughts and you clap. Like I don't know what he was doing, but
Well,
somehow
I do wonder whether I'm hoping we get some resolution to that, which is because he was saying that he was separated from the Speed Force, even though he still has a speed, doesn't really make sense. But it looked like when he was having his happy thoughts that the positive Speed Force was somehow released from him and
ah,
negated the negative Speed Force. So it looked like it wasn't him throwing lightning or him just running really fast. It looked like it was a burst of positive Speed Force energy, and it was enough to knock both of them down. But because earlier he had said when he was talking to Thawne that he was cut off from the Speed Force, but there it looked like it was a burst of pure Speed Force energy. So it could be something and again we might find out something because we have talked in the past, or at least I've talked in the past about the possibility that his connection to the Speed Force might be tied to his emotional state. So there could be something coming based on that.
I can dig
Barry
that.
races across town for the first time in costume, comes face to face with Thawne, telling his foe that he's there to save him, not himself. Thawne thinks it's a joke because the bad guys never listen. Barry tells him he's sorry for having ruined his life, but again, bad guys won't listen, so things play out in the Allen home exactly as they did with Nora's murder. Dawns on Thawne that this was a fixed point, and he loses his powers. Barry tells him that that night no longer tortures him. He's found peace, having seen his parents one last time, and he's grateful for that. Jeff, were you in any way surprised by the resolution? I mean, it kind of was telegraphed that the only way this can end is Barry has to let things happen. And another, just sort of, playing off the idea that we're assuming it's a negative Speed Force and all of that, isn't it just a little convenient that the negative Speed Force accidentally brought Barry to the one point where he could get some closure after all these years?
Yeah. Although I don't think the negative Speed Force was thinking that. Because if we are going that Cobalt Blue is a villain, then villains aren't going to give people closure. I mean, let's just be for real. But it was nice that Barry Allen got closure. Like, I love that. I love that for him. You know, he has been tortured with this for years, not even just 9 years, like ever since he was a child. And I've always said I wish Barry Allen would go to therapy, but he got the closure that he needed in this, role-playing therapy that he got in this episode. A quick little shout out to the callback that we got. The Barry Allen that told Barry Allen that he can't interfere. We got resolution to that. That plot point from many seasons ago. It was our present day Barry Allen telling his past Barry Allen self, you can't interfere. That was amazing. Also, I love that Barry Allen saved his younger self from the Reverse Flash. Like, it was just, all of that was just wonderful. It was amazing. And I love that Barry, through everything that this man has done to him, was like, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to save you. And that the Reverse Flash was just so consumed with anger over something so fucking stupid that happened to him. I mean, you even have a version of Barry Allen apologizing for his future version's stupidity. Like, but he wasn't interested in hearing it.
Well, and it wasn't even that Barry did anything stupid. Barry showed up and saved a bunch of people. So, I mean, Barry was acting heroically. It's just that, Reverse Flash,
Right. He wanted some
took that
credits.
entirely the wrong way.
Yeah. He wanted some credit. I don't even think we never saw like an actual footage of that, right? We've always just heard the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't even know what the story is. At the end of the day, maybe it was, as you said, just Barry Allen whooshing in, not even realizing that there was someone there.
Oh, probably not. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he took the credit, but he didn't really even know. But the fact that Barry was even grown enough in the present day at that moment to be like, I'm sorry for what I did. Like, you should have gotten your credit. Like, I give him props for that because that's the amount of growth that Barry Allen has had over the course of this series' run. Then leaving the Reverse Flash there powerless, like, oh God, that was just, it was magical. But clearly this is his villain origin story. So, or at least a fixed point in his origin story so that he ends up becoming the man that we get to know season 1 plus of the series.
And setting everything in motion to create the particle accelerator, which gives Barry his powers. And it's sort of, closing a lot of loops in terms of, time being a bit fixed. Now, one thing I would point out, Reverse Flash's whole theory was to go back in time and kill Barry so he never becomes a hero and everything like that. He loses his speed, and that's the end of it. I would point out to Reverse Flash, you're still a grown-ass man in 2000, and Barry's an 11-year-old kid. Just kill him. Go to his school, wait for him after, and just, get a wrench or something like that. But no. Yeah, bad guys never think things through like I would.
Okay, yes.
In Mercury Labs, Dr. Gilmore is at work, remember him, when a sudden storm takes out the power. He goes to the window and there's weird red lightning in the sky, and echoing the night Barry got his powers, he's struck by lightning in his lab and soon crackles with what appears to either be Speed Force or negative Speed Force. Hard to tell. There's also a mysterious classified CCPD file on the floor of his lab as well about the death of Eddie Thawne, who Dr. Gilmore looks exactly like but has no idea who Eddie Thawne is. So, Jeff, what's up with this?
Yeah, this is where it was a little bit confusing because I'm like, if the file was not there before, why would the lightning bring the file? And yeah, like I was very confused. I mean, clearly, if we're going to personify the negative Speed Force, like we have personified the other forces, then the negative Speed Force has a vendetta against Barry Allen. Why this individual? Did it have to like scour different timelines, different Earths, past, present, future? Clearly we're in the future-ish with Dr. Malcolm Gilmore. But I had not thought of an alternate Earth until you mentioned it, Professor. And since we did open up the fact that our characters are now cognizant of the multiverse, they learned that about 7 months ago, then we could actually be seeing that come to fruition with what you're saying. This could be an alternate Earth where, you know, this gentleman ended up becoming the personification of the negative Speed Force. I don't know anything about Cobalt Blue from the comics. I believe you're much more proficient in that, Professor. I don't know if he's a villain in the comics. Wait. I feel like I do know something about Cobalt Blue, just because I remember, like, we had the tease last year, and I was like, okay, let me research that. And I believe he is a descendant of somebody, right? That from the future, and I do believe they are a villain, if I'm not mistaken. But you can
I'm
correct
pretty sure
any
they're
of
a
that.
villain, but honestly, I don't know anything about them beyond that.
Oh, okay. Well, then he's brand new to us. I'm just it's all of it is interesting. I need a full like download backstory on why this gentleman became the conduit for this negative Speed Force. I just
Well,
need exposition.
yeah, you're assuming anyway it's negative Speed Force. What if the positive Speed Force is trying to create a new speedster to help Barry? And wouldn't it be cool if that was, a variant of Eddie? Because, in the same way that we mentioned, Matt Letcher, who, when he was cast, it was like, I'm going to be the Reverse Flash. I've got like 9 seasons of work planned out. It's like, no, actually, we're going to get ready after the first couple episodes. So, and in the same way with Eddie Thawne, wow, I'm a series regular. This is going to be 9 seasons worth of steady paycheck. No, we're going to have you sacrifice yourself at the end of the first season. Ha ha. So it was kind of nice to see them both back for that reason. But yeah, again, and the thing about Eddie is, Eddie was there was never anything wrong with Eddie. Eddie was a nice guy, a great guy. And his only flaw was that he was, Barry's, romantic rival. So in a way, it would be nice if, this Eddie Thawne variant, could be a good guy in something like that. So, yeah, I mean, we really didn't have enough. And as I say, it's curious as to, whether it is the negative Speed Force or the positive Speed Force. As you mentioned, why would it bring that file and show him this Eddie Thawne, who he's never heard of, is deceased? What is up with that? It's odd. I think there's obviously, several several, gold boots left to fall before we get some resolution on that.
Yeah, and also, if it's the negative Speed Force, why is it using the color blue?
Well, yeah, and that's that's the colors seem to have gotten a little messed up over the years because the negative
Yeah.
Speed Force, the red and the yellow, it has been a little all over the place because prior to the introduction of that piece of glowing blue crystal last season, we'd never seen the negative Speed Force be associated with blue, right? It was always red, whereas Barry's was yellow. But
And we've
well,
never
yellow
seen
and red.
Yeah, and we've never seen a force given a physical property. Like none of the other
True.
forces were
Yeah.
like a crystal.
Yeah, not manifested as like a chunk of something.
Yeah, people would just get hit by lightning, for lack of a better sense. Different colors of lightning, and that's how the still force, et cetera, came to be. So maybe we could have a situation, and this is just crackpot theorizing. We could have a situation where this blue entity is pretending to be the negative Speed Force. Maybe. And maybe Cobalt Blue, and I'm just associating that they're the same person because, hello, blue. And there was so much blue with the Doctor. If they are not the same person, because he did seem like a nice person on his Earth or in his timeline, if it's not the same person, then, maybe Cobalt Blue is something different. I feel like they have to be the same person.
Like the negative Speed Force chooses people because they're assholes, as a general rule of thumb. And there was no indication that he was anything other than a nice, as you say, like they're it's almost a save the cat moment where, he brings the coffee for the security guard. He forgot his security pass. Now, that could be sort of playing up the idea that he's a bit like Barry because, Barry was always, a bit absent-minded and forgetful before he became the Flash. They might be playing up the parallel there, or it might just have been that they want to do the sort of arty reveal of his picture. Yeah, either way, yeah, I'm not sure that I would be convinced utterly that he's evil or the negative Speed Force. I think I think we need to find out more about what's going on here. But I would love the idea that he's, being created as someone to help, if not save, Barry.
As a quick button to what you were saying, it'd be funny after all these years, the negative Speed Force of like picking assholes. They're like, you know what? We need a nice person so that we could succeed because these assholes have been failing.
Yeah, this just isn't working. Let's try something different. Before we move on to the MVP section, was there anything you wanted to mention? An Easter egg, a Hall of Shame, or a Hall of Fame moment? Personally, I did love the moment. Like, what was Chester thinking in terms of that costume? But the way Allegra gets out of it, basically, not wanting to hurt his feelings or anything like that, but then sort of sweetening it, you could come and help me take it off. Boom. And also finding out that Chester, I think we've seen it before, that Chester has the clapper in his lab, which is, pretty low tech. And anything you noticed that you wanted to bring out?
Just to sort of piggyback off of the suit situation, Chester, just make the pendant again. Like,
exactly.
Hello.
He made a pendant last episode, and now he's doing this?
You had 7 months now to make another pendant. Come on, man.
That didn't make any sense. It bugged me at the time.
And if we're going to talk about height differences, the way that they shot this sequence with them, I was like, good grief, Brandon McKnight is much more taller, or much taller, I should say, than Kayla Compton. I'm like, this is a Papa Joe Cecile situation.
Okay, it's time to choose your MVP. State which character impressed you throughout the episode and why. Once a character's been chosen, they cannot be selected again. So, Jeff, choose wisely.
Oh, I gotta go with the obvious. And I feel like he's gonna end up being MVP a lot throughout this multi-part extravaganza. But Grant Gustin, he was just fantastic from beginning to end. Like, sorry to anybody else who's gonna be playing the Flash anywhere else, but hashtag not my Flash. Like, Grant Gustin is just fantastic in this role, and just the emotional pathos that he brought. The fact that this dude that we have been rooting for 9 seasons finally got the closure that he wanted. He finally got it was a no good, very bad day for him because he vanished from his present day timeline, but it was an absolutely wonderful day for him because he got to spend the day with his parents. Probably one last time that he's going to spend the day with his parents. And so he fully got the closure that he needed. He was actually able to lend a hand, even though it wasn't accepted, to his arch nemesis. He came close to killing this person, but then he was like, I can't for the greater good, because it's a situation where if he killed him, he doesn't become the Flash and he doesn't get the future that is his present. So just seeing him grappling with everything that he did in this episode, Grant Gustin was just fantastic. Props to him.
I agree. Definitely brought the feels. Very strong episode for Grant. I'm going to give it, again, nice to see Matt Lesher back as Reverse Flash again. I really loved it, just really for that scene where they're sitting over the beers in O'Shaughnessy's. Nice to know O'Shaughnessy's been around since 2000. Where he's just like savoring the beer and savoring the moment. I think I've said before sometimes that I like villains who understand what is expected. I mentioned when I was talking about Bloodwork. Someone who understands that, there's a certain amount of, if not scene chewing, at least, you want villains who are kind of enjoying being a villain in The Flash. And I really loved that scene. I thought he was great. I thought it was a lot of fun. And, his realization that he, made a mistake. I was going to say he'd been played, but he hadn't been played. Barry was quite honest with him. He just didn't believe him. And so the circle is closed, and the path that will lead to Barry becoming the Flash is established. Now it's time to rate the episode. How would you rate the episode on a scale of 1 to 10 lightning bolts? The point system is allowed. If you found the episode exceptional, deserving of more than a 10, you may archive the episode in the Flash Museum. Jeff, how would you rate this episode?
This is going to be incredibly obvious. I'm archiving it. This was such a fan service episode, but a fan service episode in the best way possible, at least in my opinion. Once again, I mentioned this before. I mentioned this in the previous episode that we discussed, but it's like the shoulda, coulda, woulda. Like if they had done an entire season with like this level of fan service, this final season of The Flash could have rivaled Arrow as one of the best final seasons of an Arrowverse show. I'm glad that they're finally doing it, in the previous episode and this one and hopefully in the other three. If they bring the fan service, if they bring the cameos and the little Easter eggs and the winks and the nods, this could be a really solid final arc for the series. But for me, just this episode in particular, they did a fantastic job with it from beginning to end. They broke up the usual narrative structure and they turned it on its head, but in a really good way. And Grant Gustin was the tour de force in it. But everyone else, I mean, all of the returning favorites, the returning faces that showed up, they all were absolutely fantastic. So for me, it's nothing less than an archive. Very rewatchable.
Yeah, I'll go along with you. I think it's it was great to see sort of closing circles, summing things up, seeing old faces again. It really was just a delightful episode. It wouldn't, and again, something that we talk fan services if it's a bad thing, but again, for someone, if you've been watching the series for 9 years, you appreciate. Imagine watching this episode if you hadn't been watching the previous 9 years. Who's that guy? Who's that guy? Who's that guy? But for those of us who have been watching faithfully for all these years, it was delightful and certainly worth archiving. I hope they can keep that up. And also, I mentioned, at the beginning, the different narrative structure, but I think it was the right call. I think if you'd been cutting away from Barry in the past to the team in the present looking for him, it wouldn't have worked. We can get that next episode. But this episode, I think, we needed to just stay on that one story and tell it in detail, which I think they did a great job of doing. So join us next time for a brand new installment of The Central City Citizen. Here's our announcer to remind you on how you can interact with us.
Follow Papi Chulo Radio on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Papi Chulo Radio. Do you have any questions, suggestions, comments, or concerns? Email us via contact@papichuloradio.com. Are you interested in joining the Papi Chulo Radio team as an on-air personality? Email talent@papichuloradio.com. Binge listen to your favorite Papi Chulo Radio programs by visiting papichuloradio.com/archives. You can also download tonight's broadcast and the rest of the series through Apple Podcasts and Google Play. Just search for The Central City Citizen and subscribe.
Thanks, announcer. Jeff, please wish the listeners a good night.
Good night, listeners. Stay safe out there, and if you're surrounded by a blue light and magically disappear, you in danger, girl.
Indeed. Nothing you can do about it, but, just be aware of that. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to The Central City Citizen via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. New episodes released every Friday. You can also download the entire series by visiting papichuloradio.com/archives. Join us next week for the anti-penultimate episode of The Flash. Good night.